Hello everybody, welcome back to the Helix. Today on the Helix, we're covering M15 coming out in just a couple weeks, and spoilers are rolling in fast. So, let's get started. Our first mythic cycle of the set is the soul cards, which are physical forms of each of the planets they represent. In this case, the blue one is Ravnica, and Ravnica's allows you to draw cards for each different permanent you have in play, as far as their quote-unquote devotion to, or the color that they have. What's great about these cards is that their abilities are just as useful on the field as they are the graveyard, as they seem to be pretty similar in both places, meaning that you can exile it just to activate the ability that you would have the same on the field. This double take on their abilities reminds us a lot of the Titans, which activated when they came into play and when they attacked. Now these abilities didn't cost anything, where these do, but the utility that this gives in the graveyard might just be enough. But either way, it's just nice to see that Magic is referencing some of its older worlds, like Ravnica, which is more of a recent one because we just revisited it, or Zendikar, which is our only other soul card so far. Another great design so far that we've seen is Waste Not. Waste Not is a new enchantment for 2 mana that allows you to get an ability whenever a card is discarded from your opponent's hand. This card screams combo, but I'm really interested to see what people come up with. Maybe we'll talk about it a bit more next week when I have some deck ideas. Genesis Hydra is another promising card that can gain you a lot of value if you're willing to invest in it, and it will be interesting to see what impact a card like this will have on Standard with already format-defining cards like Monsters brings to the table. A couple cards flying under the table are Void Snare and Ulcerate. These cards are some of the most powerful for their cost, being only 1 mana. Ulcerate lets you get rid of a card with 3 toughness, or just give them -3/-3 until the end of the turn for the low cost of 3 of your life. And then Void Snare can return any permanent back to its owner's hand for the measly cost of 1 mana. An ability like Void Snares has not been seen at that cost for a very long time, and it'll be interesting to see what impact it has on formats as old as Modern even. But speaking of Modern, Chasm Sculler is a very overlooked card. This card grows extremely fast, especially with cards like Gitaxian Probe and Street Wraith, which allow you to gain even more value off of its abilities. The tokens it drop are no laughing matter either, as those 1/1s can come in swarms. But even with cards like this, the core sets always have more effect on Standard, where they have life for about a year. So in this case, a lot of the format-defining cards in Standard are cards like Binding of Thassa, which are enchantments that have lasting impact on the game. So how do you interact with these cards? Well, not efficiently in Standard right now, which requires you to invest a card alone just to do it. But in M15, we have the rise of Reclamation Sage. Reclamation Sage allows you to kill an enchantment or an artifact, even though Pithing Needle is the only artifact really seen in any play. This is a cost-effective and overall efficient way to deal with these cards that have been such a problem in Standard in the past, and really gives you a lot of value where they already got value out of their 1 card they use already. And one of the most interesting things about these cards is how many make it into main decks, as a lot of these cards are really good in the sideboard, but it's always very interesting to see how these cards interact so well that they need to be in the main deck, as just a staple way to deal with certain threats. And the last thing I want to say about M15 is that the reprints aren't very impressive. So far, the only reprints that we've seen that are of any consequence are of the Ornithopter, Darksteel Citadel, Shard Blast, and a Johnny's Primate, which we already had copies of some variety or another, but it's nice to see these again, even though it'll be interesting to see if we get any other worth talking about in the future. But even cards for Standard, outside of Jason's Ingenuity, they just haven't rang any bells yet. So, that's M15. We've seen a lot of cards so far, and they're very impressive, and it looks like this set's going to have a large impact on Standard, and maybe some older formats too. We'll talk about more of those cards later. But for now, Jesus loves you.